I'm going to take a departure today from my normal videos, and I'm just going to tell you a story. Back in May of 1980, I had a near-death experience. Earlier in the month, I had walked the stage and completed my doctorate, so I was riding high in my head. I was feeling really good about life. It was the Memorial Day weekend, and my wife and I had gone to a lake cabin with some friends, and we were out on a boat, water skiing, and I was the one back on skis. As we were out there in the water, we did that circular kind of turn that you do when you're trying to turn the boat around. And unfortunately, I was steered right into a cluster of tree stumps. Now, when you're in that centrifugal force, you're going about 35 miles per hour. And so when I hit, it was bad. I hit mostly on my right side. My femur was snapped in two different places. My pelvis on the right side was broken in 5 different places. One of the brakes went in and punctured my bladder, and that's one of the things that almost took me in because I started bleeding from the inside. Down on my left leg, at the knee, my leg was an L. I broke my right arm. I developed fatty embolisms in my lungs. I was a mess. Well, the paramedics had to actually come to me on a boat from a campground off to the side somewhere, and they were able to get balloon splints on me. They lifted me into a stretcher onto the boat and got me off to the shore and into an ambulance, and off we went to the emergency room, and there I received a couple of surgeries just to stabilize me. About 5 days later, I went to the big hospital in Dallas, Texas, and there I met Miguel. And Miguel wound up being, I didn't know it at the time, but Miguel wound up being someone who became my teacher, my mentor. Miguel was, I later learned, was from Nicaragua. He was an orderly there on the orthopedic wing there where I was assigned. And as soon as I got there, he just made himself known. He let me know, I know you're struggling, you're hurting, I was in a whole lot of pain, and it's my job to help you out. And help me out, he did. Now, obviously, there were plenty of other people on staff that were there, but I wound up being in the hospital for about 8 weeks, and of all the people that were engaged in helping me, Miguel was the one I spent the most time with. Now, being the orderly, he was charged with keeping me clean, and he would bathe me. Now, I had one leg in traction, another leg in a splint. My arm was in a splint. My other arm wasn't all that good. I had a breathing mask on me. I looked like one of those cartoon characters, you know, after they got hit by a Mack truck. That was me. And so he had to devise ways to put plastic bags underneath me so he could bathe me in my bed. I liked it most when he washed my hair because it just felt so good. In addition, he just did all sorts of little things like to organize my room. I had problems with my fever, and he would keep me cool and just be there and just very gently putting cool, moist rags on my face just to kind of help me out. And he spent extra time with me. He was a very gentle soul. And he was probably about 35-ish, a little pudgy. I already had some salt and pepper hair going on, and just didn't have a whole lot to say unless you wanted to talk with him. Now, he was one of these kind of guys that I learned later had the respect of all of the other staff members as well. There would be doctors and nurses coming in and out and other kind of people, and many times they would defer to him. It's like, Miguel, what do you think, or what do we have going on here? And he was just kind of one of these guys that was in the know. And there were just all sorts of little things that he would do for me. For example, there was one medicine that I took that just guaranteed I was going to have some nausea. So when he knew I was having to take that medicine, he would hurry down and pick up some ice shavings for me, and he would spoon feed me, knowing that that would help my nausea. Or there was once a time I knew I was going to have to sign some documents. Well, when you have an arm that's been operated on and you're right-handed with my right arm, you don't write very well. And so I had to do things left-handed. So he said, well, let me get some pen and paper and let's practice. That wasn't in his job description, but that's just what he did. And just all sorts of little small things just to help me along. There would be times when it was later in the evening and the activity's rather slow. He could have gone down to the break room, but what he would do multiple times, he would just come into my room, lean against the wall, and I knew he was ready to talk. And I would ask him about how his day was going and what other kind of things he had going on besides just taking care of me, and he would talk with me about it. And over the course of time, I learned that he had actually been a refugee from the country of Nicaragua. Earlier, that country had had some political uprising, and he and his family had to leave very quickly with literally nothing more than the shirt on their back. I found out that he had been in medical school for 2 years, and he was well on his way toward becoming a doctor. But once he got to the United States, none of his credits transferred. And when he was trying to find a job, of course, the first thing he did is he came into a hospital because that's what he knew. And that's how he got there to work with me. I asked him a question. I said, now, Miguel, here you were well on your way to becoming a medical doctor, and now you're working on a ward as an orderly. Doesn't that frustrate you that you don't get to follow that dream like you had hoped? And he looked at me kind of like, what kind of an odd question was that? And his comment was, I'm on the team. And he said, I could be down in the surgery room helping you. I could be in physical therapy. I could be in the recovery room, or I can be up here taking care of you in this kind of way. I'm on the team, and that's what I like. And I really liked and appreciated his attitude. There would just be all sorts of times when he would just kind of show his kindness and his patience in other kinds of ways. There was once a student nurse who was in my room, and she was assigned with the task of moving me over to my side so I wouldn't get bed splints. And it was like a wrestling match because she was just kind of shoving me. Miguel was in there, and he was watching. He knew I was in pain. So he just kind of stepped in very gently and said, let me show you how to do this. And he positioned his hands correctly. And we had done this before. And so he got me to the position they were wanting me in. And later when she left the room, I just said, hey, Miguel, thanks for saving me from that wrestling match, buddy. And he just said very gently, she's learning. When the other personnel were in the room, doctors, nurses, etc., like I said, it became evident that Miguel was the quiet alpha. I learned later on from some of the other staff members that he was their gold star. He was the standard bearer for care. Everyone liked Miguel. Everyone knew what he stood for. He stood for excellence. He stood for decency, and he stood for kindness. Once when we were talking about his time there in Nicaragua and how he had to leave abruptly, I was talking with him again about how life just kind of throws transitions at him. And Miguel, it's just so interesting that you are trying to make your way in a new country here. And he said, yeah, and I'm adjusting. I'm figuring it out. And then he turned it on to me. He said, you're in a time of adjustment, aren't you? You had all sorts of wonderful plans about what you were going to do to get your career going. And I had just joined a very good practice, and I was trying to make my mark. And he knew I was kind of had a setback. He said, but when you have setbacks, you just have to figure out what am I going to do with this? He said, look at you. You could have fallen forward, and had you done that, you would have drowned when I was on the skis. Fortunately, I fell back, and I had a heavy enough vest that would allow me to survive, literally. He said, you could have been paralyzed, and you're not paralyzed. You've got some rehab to do, and you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you, but you'll be able to make it. And a lot of it is going to depend on your attitude and your mindset as you get through this tough time. I've been through my tough times. You've been through your tough times. We're all in this together, aren't we? I'll do my work. I want you to do your work. And he actually became kind of my therapist in that way. Miguel, when I look back, gave up any kind of claim that he might have had to be in the superior position. I really don't know that thought even crossed his mind. I work with narcissists, and they must be superior. But it's like, no, I'm just going to relate one human to another. Close enough. Narcissists want to be great. They want to be the best. They're not great when they're in that high control and high dominance mode. Miguel was great. He was great because of his kindness. He was kind to me. He was kind to the other persons he worked with. He had a knack for just showing up. He was available. And I noticed that as he engaged with people who had not evolved, if you will, in their skills in quite the same way he was non-judgmental. I don't know if a critical word or thought ever ran through his mind. He was accepting of people. He was a quiet, strong individual. He was the alpha wherever he was. He was limited in his resources. Prestige was something he didn't seek. And yet everyone knew that when he was in the room, he was the one that kind of was the glue that held everything together. Throughout my career, I've worked with people in anger management settings and people that struggle with narcissistic relationships. And I deal with a lot of people who have strong egos and lots of anger and overwhelming styles of dealing with people. I wish that I could just bring Miguel to those folks and say, Exhibit A, right here. This is how you do life. And Miguel was just would be the kind of person, just through his persona, just through his character, that would have much to teach. About 6 years after I was discharged from my time there in the hospital, a friend of mine had an injury and had to have surgery on the same orthopedic wing that I had been on. So I went to visit him, and as I went there, I passed by the nursing station, and guess who was there? It was my old buddy, Miguel. And I stood there in front of him and I said, Miguel, do you remember me? And he looked at me and said, yeah, the guy who doesn't know how to ski worth a flip. Those were his exact words. And he laughed real hard, and I laughed real hard. He came over and gave me the biggest bear hug, and we just held on to each other for a while. I let him know how he had made a difference in my life. He loved me. I loved him. We were in different worlds. We had different paths that we went on, but it was very evident. He was a good man. You know, when I think about how I have been in my career, and I've had the opportunity to have an influence on other individuals, teaching about the better way to live and how to lay down ego and how to manage yourself well, make no mistake, it's not just because of me having been in academia that I learned what I learned. I stand on the shoulders of people like Miguel, who showed me, he said, want to see how to do life well? Watch this. He wouldn't say that out loud to save his life, but that's what he stood for. And I'm so pleased to have had exposure to him. He became a mentor, a professor to a guy like me who had just stepped out of 8 years of academia and just showed me what it was like. I want to be more like Miguel. I want to be the kind of person that when they walk away, they say, I was glad I was in that person's presence. I want you to be like Miguel. I'm hoping that there can be this determination on the inside of you that says there is goodness in this world. There's a lot of brashness in this world, but some of us can figure it out and get it and learn how to live with love and decency and helpfulness and kindness. We can be difference makers. So Miguel gave me what I needed at a very particular time in my life. I'm hoping that you can be the kind of person that says, I'm going to be on the lookout rather than these self-absorbed, narcissistic kind of persons. I'm going to be somebody that shows decency. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, I would encourage you to go beneath the video here and hit that subscribe button. If you have a need for counseling, I would encourage you, if there's someone in your area that you could go to see, that you would do so and avail yourself to that possibility. And if you don't have someone, we vetted a group and we have a link below here that can take you to some online counseling. I've gotten real good feedback from individuals too who have used our service, and I'm pleased with that. We have our website, survivingnarcissism.tv, drlescarter.com. We have links to our library with books and online videos and things like that. Miguel was a giver of peace. I'm hoping that you can join me in being a giver of peace. And when you give it away, that's when you find your own peace.